She was an opera singer, and now she leads engineering teams. Hi, everyone. I'm Raymond Lee, the host of Clocking Out. Today's guest is Anna McDougall. Anna is originally from Sydney, Australia, and I have to say, she has a pretty remarkable story. To me, Anna's career is a prime example of reinvention. She transitioned from digital marketing to singing opera on the big stage, to coding software, to leading engineers, and recently to authoring a book titled You Belong in Tech. What a journey I'm about to share with you today. The one thing that sums up Anna is her energy and her curiosity. And I feel you're going to get this right from the start. Anna shares that her first clocking out moment was due to extreme burnout and how she decided to pivot and get into opera. I'm going to hold back on sharing with you how she gets from opera to writing code, so buckle up. Please enjoy Anna McDougall and her clocking out journey. Hi, Anna. Welcome to the podcast. It's nice to see you.
Hi, it's so nice to see you again. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Yeah, I am as well. And I feel like I know you at this point because over the last few weeks since our initial conversation, I have been just researching your background. I've been watching interviews and podcasts, and it's just been fun. And I have to say, Anna, the one word that comes to mind for me is energy.
Yes, I would agree with that. That's fairly accurate.
Yeah, no, I love it. And every video that I watch, I felt your energy. And I know that you had 2 clocking out moments, which we're going to talk about here, but it's just pretty impressive how you've, at least in the latest role, how you've, sort of achieved this level of excellence. I saw you recognized as Software Engineering Leader of 2024. You wrote a book called You Belong in Tech, TEDx speaker. You're not someone who gives things just a little bit of a percent. Like you're all in 110%. So just kudos to everything that you've done.
That's really nice to hear. Yeah, I definitely don't do things in half measures. It has a lot of pros, but it does have its cons, I have to say as well. But yeah, overall, I do things that I love and I go for them, and that's kind of like my whole philosophy, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's so important because when you're making an intentional decision to lean into something, especially if it's a significant career pivot, making that choice is hard enough because the fear of the uncertainty is obviously what, makes people not do that, right? And so I think people here today are going to really relate to your story and also some of the significant pivots that you made along the way.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I've got a lot in there, and it's definitely not a traditional story. So, I really, one of the reasons I like talking and sharing these things is because I have gotten so much feedback from people over the years that it's helped them kind of have realizations about their own careers and their own priorities. And that's really, I mean, I've spoken about this. We mentioned this in our debrief, but I've spoken about these transitions in many different places before. And the reason I keep coming back to it is because I know it helps people, and it helps, I guess, even society to some extent in accepting the fluidity of careers and how people can move and change their lives. So, I'm really happy to be here.
That's great. Yeah, I am as well. So tell us, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
So I'm from Sydney, Australia. So I grew up in an inner city suburb called Balmain. It's a beautiful area, working class area traditionally, but now it's kind of been very strongly gentrified. So now it's a bit of a like snooty area. But when my parents bought our house there before I was born, and I basically lived there my whole life, grew up there, went to uni while still living at home. And yeah, that's really, when I think of like childhood home, it's like very clear to me where I'm talking about. But now I live in Germany. So now I live in Leipzig, Germany. So very different place. I would now call this home. It's a bit complex, I suppose, when you've lived in a long time in two different countries, how to define what home is anymore. But yeah, those are my two homes, let's say.
Nice. Nice. What did your parents do for a living?
So with my mum, it's very easy to answer. My mum was an academic. So she actually began as a social worker, and then she decided that it was maybe too emotionally intense of a job. And so she decided to go back to university and study again. She got her PhD. And from there became a professor of media and communications studies. So audience studies, how the media affects audiences. At that time, of course, it was mostly television and radio. The internet hadn't quite taken off yet, but towards the end of her career, before she retired, obviously, the internet and social media started creeping in to her purview. For my father, it is a harder question to answer. He is a real free spirit. You know, he was a hippie in the 60s and 70s. Really, like, he did art. He was the first person in his family to go to university, and he got a scholarship to go to art school. So he studied art, but he also studied economics. So he has done all sorts of art over the years. So photography, painting, but also more recently writing novels. But in between, he's worked as a school economics teacher. He ran his own small business doing guided hikes in the Australian bushland for many, many years. So, you know, when talking about my childhood, I have also very vivid memories of being in the bush doing bushwalks with him and camping. And yeah, we had a cabin at one point on one of the hikes that he would guide, and staying there. You know, I almost stepped on a snake one time. Like, you know, there's a lot of cool things kind of pop into my mind when I think about my childhood and the time I spent with my dad. He was a very strong, or is, I should say, a very strong presence in my life, but especially as a kid, he coached my soccer team. He spent a lot of time with me. He was a very active father, but as you can see, it's hard to define him in one word.
Right. Oh my gosh. So I have to say, like, that makes so much sense now that you, like, when I think about your career, like at the highest level,
Yeah.
just the way you describe mom and dad makes so much sense, because your mom is someone who is very disciplined, very structured, went very intentional through a very, logical career path, is in, academics. Your dad is free-spirited. He's an entrepreneur. He's an innovator. He's creative. And so this blend of academics and entrepreneurship is like, it's almost the recipe for your success, ultimately. Like, it's so cool.
I've definitely got a bit of both. I have to say, it's funny because I think a lot of people who meet me, you know, they think that I've got this kind of quirky, wild energy to me, but I'm actually a super structured person. I'm very, very disciplined, I would say now.
Right.
Wasn't always that way, but I got there. But people kind of, when they first meet me, I give this impression, I think, of being quite like, quirky, weirdo in a good way, but like, quirky weirdo. And then they meet my dad, and it's like, it's suddenly, I look like I am, a nun compared to him.
Right.
So he's wild.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you take the best of each of your parents. And I think that you're very authentic in terms of how you show up. And, I think that's so important. And so, your quirkiness and how you just describe yourself, I'm sure connects and relates to a lot of people, but deep down inside, you have this way about how you do work and get work done. So I think that's really cool. So Anna, when you were a young girl, what did you dream about being?
I wanted to be a writer. I got really into books. I mean, I guess a lot of kids do, but I started really early on writing, really into language. I would write short stories. There were like a few of those, like, kids magazines, that were around. And because my mom was in this media world, she would find out about submissions being open. I think I won one or two like little under 10 writing competitions, like really little cute little things like that. So writing short stories. So I kind of wanted to be an author. At the same time, I had a flair for the stage. I started doing drama quite young, and I also had, the idea of being an actress or a singer. So, pretty typical kid stuff to dream about at that stage, I would say. And yeah, it's interesting that when I was 8, I began coding, and yet that actually I don't think at that age I was aware of that as being a career option, or as that as being something, where a job was attached to it, because I had that kind of kid understanding of what jobs were, maybe not a deeper understanding of how rich and complex the career world is.
That's interesting. So how do you connect to coding at a young age? Like, I just think about kids, like it makes sense how you were drawn to writing and singing, and even around the family, you're performing in front of them. Like, there's some natural ways to express, those interests. But how does one like start coding?
So just to give some context, I was born in 87. So when I was 8, it was 1995, and the internet was only just starting to kind of come into homes. It was unusual that a house would have a computer with internet access at that time. I had an advantage there that my father loved computers generally. So I grew up already like playing Tetris and Carmen Sandiego and things like this on our home computer that was not connected to the internet at that stage, just normal old school floppy disk games. And I already therefore had a bit of a connection to computers. When my father started his company, he had a little office. He only had about 2 employees, but they had a little office that was kind of near our house, so I could go there after school. And that's when I discovered the internet, because his office computer had a connection to the internet. And I started off just like, I don't know, just browsing. Like, I went into the Yahoo chat rooms, which of course now I would not recommend putting an 8-year-old into an open Yahoo chat room. But at the time, it was the Wild West. Like, no one knew what was there, what wasn't there, or the potential dangers, let's say, involved. So I kind of started that way. I think that kind of led into IRC and some of these like other chat platforms. And from there, I kind of discovered, personal web pages, blogs, like GeoCities, Angelfire were quite popular back then. And so I kind of had this interest in the internet. And then we were in a bookstore, and I remember it very vividly that we were there, and I really liked the Goosebumps series as a kid. And my parents were like, okay, you can choose one book. Like, do you want another Goosebumps? And I spotted this book that said, Learn HTML at Home. And I said, no, I want that, which must have been like 3 times as expensive as the Goosebumps book. Because I remember my parents being like, really? Like, you really want that? Like, kind of that natural parental skepticism of like, are you actually going to do any of this? Or is this just you like picking up something shiny? But sure enough, they bought it for me. And I went onto my dad's computer, and I just started following the steps and began creating websites. And my first website was, I don't know if you've heard of Father Ted. It's like an old BBC TV show. But I created a page of Father Ted links. It was like a site that amalgamated links to Father Ted web pages. So that was kind of my my first homepage project, if you will.
Wow. I think that's amazing how you picked up that book. And the word that came to mind when you just described that story is curiosity. And how even at an early age, you had curiosity of the arts, you had curiosity of technology, and you just picked up the book, you started reading, you started coding, building websites. And I just think that that curiosity is sort of, where does that come from, do you think?
Oof, that's a good question. Where does that curiosity come from? I don't know. I think I've just always been that way. I've always described myself as a Jill of all trades. Or, you could also say a Renaissance woman, however you want to put it, where it's just always been a thing of like casting around, having different interests. I was that kid at school who was in like every extracurricular group, so it was like, it's just always been a thing that I do where I want to at least know the basics of something. And I find that early stage of learning something, going from zero knowledge to basically proficient, I find that journey very, very rewarding. I really like that phase, which is funny because I've heard that, like, when I've spoken to other people about this, they've said, oh, that's the part that I am the most scared of because, I know nothing and it seems so big and scary. And I'm like, oh no, that's the best part. Like, that's where you do all the discovery and you get all that like false confidence that you could learn everything really easily. And my problem over the years has been committing to these things. And I think that changed, later on, like more in my mid-20s is more or less when it changed. But up until that point, it was more like just casting around, trying to find like what drove me, trying to expand my mind. And yes, interesting question. I don't know where it came from, I suppose, is the short answer.
So you had all this curiosity. You dabbled in lots of things as a kid. What did you ultimately decide to do as a career?
Where did I land? Yeah, you were thinking about this idea of casting around. I get this image in my head of like a bird kind of floating over a few different fields, being like, oh, which one am I going to land in? Yeah, I think it's a little bit like that. Even at university, it was not easy for me. I started off in an arts degree, just a Bachelor of Arts, very simple, which gave a lot of flexibility, which was my goal, that I wanted to try lots of different things out. So in my first year, I knew I wanted to do a language, so I studied Spanish. But I also tried sociology, I did some psychology, I did some ancient Greek mythology because I loved ancient history as well. There were lots of different kind of things. Philosophy, of course, yes. Philosophical logic was like my best topic. I still remember like being in there and being like, why is everyone confused by this? It's so easy. So, I think the signs were there that I should maybe go more in that direction, but I did not. I had originally thought then after my first year, I wanted to actually change into school careers counseling because I thought, okay, here's a nice mix between like helping people and learning some psychology, but not having to be like a sit you down on the couch kind of psychologist. But as I was about to transfer into that program, they shut that program down. So then I was like, oh, okay, I can't do that program. What else can I do? And I switched into a media communications degree. So that meant that I was learning journalism skills, radio editing, video editing, TV production, what else? I mean, also media theory, these kinds of things. So a lot of the professors knew my mom, weirdly enough, which kind of created a bit of an expectation on me, but it was fine. And then I also, as said, also had a secondary major in Spanish that I followed through on. So when I got out of university, it was 2009. So 2008 global financial crisis had occurred. It was not a great time to be graduating. There were not a heap of jobs around, especially not in media. And I ended up doing project management for a conference company, so for corporate conferences. So basically taking the event from conception through to programming, finding the speakers, and then organizing the teams around sponsorship, sales, and the actual like logistical planning. So yeah, project managing the event itself, but then also the teams that were surrounding the event to make sure it went off without a hitch, and then flying out to those events and running them on site too. So I did that for a while, burnt out hard, very quickly, because it was really intense. and switched into digital marketing for a company called Opera Australia, which, as the name suggests, is the national opera company in Australia. They're the ones who put on all the operas at the Sydney Opera House, but also they do like regional tours, school tours, also some in Melbourne. So yeah, I did their digital marketing, mostly social media, blogs, that kind of stuff for them for about 2 years.
Oh, wow. So your degree ended up being media communications, but you were interested in journalism and all aspects of arts. Was there any connection to this interest early on of writing? And was there an expectation that you wanted a job where you were writing, or did it sort of just evolve to this media communications?
It's a good question. I actually wasn't so interested in the writing side. I didn't want to be a journalist. I was more enjoying the video and radio editing side. Mm-hmm. So one of the volunteer positions that I did for like 7 years in Sydney was doing radio presenting for a local volunteer radio station for the blind and visually impaired. So basically like reading the news, like reading newspapers, but out loud on radio. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that kind of presenting. But again, kind of like foreshadowing the direction I would go in, what I really got into was the editing side. So actually like going into the software, having all the film, like sticking it together, like quite the technical kind of angle. So I didn't quite pick up again on the hint there that was right in front of me looking back. But that was more the angle that I was interested in. So I did an internship, for example, with the ABC doing editing of one of their programs.
That's great. I love that. So you mentioned the word burnout, and I want to know, like, describe what burnout is. Like in that particular role, what was it that led to that?
In that particular role, it was very intense in that like the whole day was spent basically on phone calls with people. It was the way it was programmed is that you had a 28-day cycle to actually program each event. So days like 1 to 3 would be like research, days 4 to 10 would be like putting together the program, days 11 to 16 you get the speakers, etc., etc. Like I don't remember now exactly what the days were, but it was like that. Every single day was planned out for you, exactly what you had to do, and a lot of it involved cold calling to get information, to request people to be speakers. LinkedIn was in its very early days at that stage, so you could use it a little bit, but it wasn't like super reliable as a source of finding people. So it was really about picking up the phone and calling people. That kind of stuff I found really interesting. But the tight deadline-based version of it, followed by very intense profit tracking, was, I think, just like too much stress. There were some really clear signs for me that it was not going to work. The first was that I was gaining weight. So in 1 year, I gained 10 kilos, which I think is, 25 pounds. So, like quite a lot for 1 year straight out of university. I was drinking more because we were doing Friday drinks, and I was feeling so stressed at the end of the week that I would go out drinking with everyone. I was eating worse food. It was clear that my health was declining the longer I was in this role. And the clearest mental sign for me was that whenever I got to like Sunday afternoon, like about 3 or 4 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, I would feel this sense of rising dread. Like it was like rising in my chest, where I was like, oh no, tomorrow I got to go to work. Oh my God. This sense. And to me, that was a very, very clear sign that this is not right.
Well, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. I feel like that how you just articulated that is so relatable to people. And I believe it's a buildup over time, right? Like when you're in a role and you're in a job that is just pushing your limits, and, just the amount of stress that work puts on the body. And then all of a sudden you start seeing those symptoms, they start to impact your health. It's almost a wake up sign that,
totally,
you need to, you need to really course correct. And, sometimes people try to just manage through it. They're like, you know what, I'm going to work through this. And they try to manage the work in a way that suppresses those symptoms. But ultimately, over time, it's not sustainable.
I think that's exactly it. I think if it had been like, hey, these are the goals and we expect it to be done within a 30 to 35 day period and you can organize how you do that, then I think it might have been different because the actual content of the job was not so bad for me. And actually, I was one of the highest achieving employees. So from the outside, it probably looked like I was doing great. But I was like feeling this sense of like constant, stress and then like complete, complete relief or letting go on the weekend and then like back to high stress mode. So there was no kind of like, there wasn't this feeling of being balanced throughout the week either. And so, I didn't have the capacity. Also because I was a fresh graduate, like I didn't have the capacity or I didn't feel like I had the power to push back and say, this is how I want to work and this is what I want to do. It was much more like, I'm in my first full-time job. I don't want to mess this up. Like, I'm going to give my all and look, I'm getting results and everyone's congratulating me and I'm winning this award and blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to keep going and then kind of ignoring these things that were happening to me. And then as I said, eventually I reached the point where I said, okay, this is not sustainable. And then I switched into that marketing role, which was much better.
Wow. So tell me about that next journey. When was this the first clocking out moment for you?
So I would say my first clocking out moment was at the end of the marketing role. So when I switched into marketing, it felt to me almost like an extension of my skills. So it didn't feel like I was changing course really. It was more like, okay, I built these skills. I'm good on the phones. I'm good at like writing these brochures and writing this material like to promote these events. I'm on LinkedIn already. So I've kind of already got this social media presence. It's just expanding those skills into an area that I'm more excited about because I'd been a fan of opera since I was a teenager. So it was really nice for me to be in the opera world, to get to go to rehearsals, to get to like go to a lot of the shows at the Sydney Opera House and set up these cool events for people. So get excited about it, try to get more young people in. It was very fun for me in that sense. But it was through that I then kind of started my next clocking out moment, so to speak, which was that I had done some singing lessons as a kid, again, just as part of my general exploration of everything. And I said, it's been so long since I've tried this. Like, wouldn't it be fun to take some more singing lessons? I wonder if any of the singers here do it. And I found one named Gillian Sullivan, who had been a soprano there, and she was now mainly teaching. So she started teaching me. And she kind of identified, okay, you're not a soprano anymore, you're a mezzo-soprano. So we started looking in that direction. And after a few months of kind of taking singing lessons in a few lunch breaks, because you got the offices for Opera Australia were directly underneath the rehearsal studios. So it was really easy for me to just kind of like go up the stairs one level during my lunch breaks, take a singing lesson, and then come back to my desk.
Oh, wow.
So that's basically what I did. And after a few months, she kind of said to me, listen, like, you can keep doing this for fun. Like, it's fine if you just want to have it as a hobby. But if you did want to take it further, I think you could do this professionally. And that was when I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I started looking into the Masters of Music program that was at the Sydney Conservatorium, which is one of the premier music schools in Australia. And they had this, Masters of Music program for opera performance where you study languages, stagecraft, and of course you get vocal lessons from some of their staff. Yeah. So I started looking into that and I decided to go for it. I found a teacher from the school who kind of like took me under her wing and then kind of helped me prepare for the audition. I managed to convince them that because I had so much stage experience through theatre and like amateur theatre stuff that I'd done at university as well, that, okay, I might not have the musical background, like I don't know music theory, but I can perform in an opera and therefore you should take me. And then, of course, I did the audition where I sang for them and they basically said, yep, okay, like, come on in. And that was the beginning of my 2-year master's program.
I love that. I'm curious, if you're an opera singer, are there places like Sydney, Australia, where you can make a real living versus, some random city somewhere else? Like, I just wonder, were you following a passion or did you really make a good living at it? And what was it about the location that made it unique, I guess?
Okay, so firstly, I had to move back home with my parents to do this. So it wasn't, being a music student is not a historically well-paid profession. So I also did a lot of other jobs. So I was working mostly mornings, but sometimes evenings as a personal trainer. So I started after this stint, as I mentioned earlier, where I gained these 10 kilos, in the years intervening, I got really into fitness and I ended up getting my certification to be a personal trainer. I don't think I mentioned this the last time we spoke. This is another little thing I did for a while. And I also was certified as a powerlifting coach as well. So I got really into strength training. And so I was earning money that way, basically like 2 casual jobs. I was working as a trainer, but then I was also doing ushering for the concerts that they were doing at the Sydney Conservatorium. So they put on a lot of concerts at the place and they need ushers, people to show them their seats or, shine a light down the aisle when someone needs to find their place, check tickets, that kind of stuff. So I also kind of got to do that work too. And in that way I had a bit of an income. Professionally though, after I graduated, there are some options to make a living as a singer. I mentioned earlier that Opera Australia does tours, and I was hired straight out of my master's degree into what's called the schools tour. So that means they take an opera. In this case, it was Rossini's Cenerentola, which means a Cinderella. And they make an English language version of it. They shorten it, make it really fun for kids. And then you basically go into schools, have to unpack the entire set it up, then perform the opera and then pack everything down and go to the next school. So very high, physically demanding job. And yeah, I did that for a season before I took the plunge and moved to Germany for exactly the reason you just said. Outside of those kinds of roles, it is rare and difficult to find a full-time singing job in any of Australia. I think nowadays, they use a lot of freelance contracts, even for the regular chorus. So it's really there are maybe 20, 25 full-time singing jobs in all of Australia. So almost impossible to make a consistent living that way without something else supporting it. Whereas here in Germany, it is the number 1 country in the world for putting on opera productions. Next in line is the US. So Germany has about 7,000 productions per year, and the US has about 3,500. So that gives you an idea of how far ahead Germany is to the rest of the world. And it's the natural place that a lot of opera singers gravitate towards. And that was the same for me. So I came to Germany, therefore, to try my luck, so to speak, and do the audition circuits. And and my husband did the same. So he's also a singer.
Wow. That's fantastic. I love the fact that you, while you were describing this transition into opera singer, I wrote "Fuel Your Heart." And I think that the first job that you had in marketing was sort of that was feeding your mind, and you worked that job. You were the best at it. You learned skills. You really proved that you can apply yourself. You graduated from college, but that job led to, just overwork, anxiety, and this outlet that curiosity sort of came to life, and you leaned into this career as an opera singer. You did the things that you had to do practically. You moved home, which is I oftentimes hear that you're taking a step back. You have to move back home with mom and dad, and it's a reset, but you're fueling your heart, and just seeing you navigate through that journey and identifying like this is your new identity that's taking shape. And you saw this opportunity to leave Australia and move to the country where your skills that you've acquired and developed were really going to come to life. I just think that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me about Germany.
Yeah. Germany is an interesting egg. It's a very cool place to be, in my opinion. I really love it here. Like I've applied for citizenship, so I'm waiting on my appointment so I can submit all my paperwork. So I really love it here. But I have to say it is not an easy country to integrate into. There's not a lot of warmth and friendliness, especially when you first arrive and you can't speak the language. There's kind of it's also different. Like, I mean, I'm from Australia, right? We're all pretty open, friendly people in general. And coming to a country that is, I mean, just feels more introverted. There's a lot more kind of like walls up. People like to keep their distance also physically from each other. The buses and trains are basically silent. You know, people aren't talking, or if they are, they're talking like this, you know, they're just kind of speaking under their voices. So there's like, it's really a different environment to Australia where you get on the bus and someone's like, hey, Shazza, what are you doing tonight? It's like, so, you know, it's completely different vibe. I have to say. And so that part was really hard. The language is extremely hard to learn. I have an advantage, which is that I'm naturally good with languages, and I had learnt Spanish before, so I'd kind of been through the process of learning a language, which gave me a leg up. My husband was not so lucky. He's not naturally good with languages, but he's a really hard worker, so that like his consistency paid off there. So I'm now functionally fluent. Like I can say and do basically everything that I need to in German. Yeah, and so for that first year in Germany, it was really me like trying to find a place, trying to make some money. I was on a working holiday visa, which meant I had 1 year to find more stable work. And in the meantime, I could do odd jobs, whatever. But I was not yet in a position to take on a role that was entirely in German. My German was not good enough yet. So
Anna, I have to ask, if I may.
Please.
You're, like I mentioned earlier, I said energy, like you have so much energy and enthusiasm about how you show up and your authenticity. And this move from Australia to Germany, it sounds like there was some real, hurdles to overcome. And I just wonder, was there ever a moment when you were there where you were just like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work for me. I need, like, you had that kind of conversation with your husband that I think we should go back. And I just wonder if you ever had any of those conversations.
It's funny. No, I didn't. And I think the reason was I had just decided, like, it's really, for me, it's like a binary thing. Like either I'm in or I'm out. And I was in. So it was just like, I'm going to make it work. And I kind of just knew that. I did have a backup plan in case things didn't work out. So I had, my grandmother was born in the UK, so I could get a UK ancestry visa. So I got that before I left for Germany, just in case I was going to get kicked out of Germany. And but I wanted to stay in Europe, and I wanted to really try to make the career work. So I had just decided. There were tough times for sure. So that first year I mostly worked three jobs. One was a cafe, one was a bar, a craft beer bar, and the other was teaching English online. So with these three casual jobs combined, I kind of made enough to pay rent, but I was going into debt like buying the groceries. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Yeah.
it was not easy. And then I was also traveling to various auditions, which of course were all over the country, also in Austria. So that costs money. So the bank account was getting low. The conditions were tough. There was a period where my husband went back to Australia. He was just my boyfriend at the time. He went back to Australia for a while because he had kind of come over with me just to kind of do some language courses. But he had a contract already starting in Germany the next year. So he couldn't like come for a certain time and stay. He kind of came for 2 months, went back to Australia for 4 months, and then came back again later. So those 4 months in particular were really hard because, you know, we're trying to do long distance between spots that are basically on opposite sides of the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And also not having someone who I could talk to daily about what's going on and what I'm struggling with and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So that was definitely a low point. But it's funny, no, I never considered coming back.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love how your backup plan was not, you knew in your mind that you were never going to pull the trigger on that, but
Mm,
you're sort of like that backup plan provided you comfort to know that, you're going to make this work. But in your mind, that sort of backup plan was there. Um, so
I
tell
think
me,
also,
go-
sorry, before we
yeah,
move on, I
please.
think it's really important I also point out that in my heart of hearts, like in the back of my mind, I always knew I am so privileged that I have parents where if I really got into a financial bind, if I really got into the state where like I have no job, I have no money, I'm about to be kicked out of the country, I knew that I had support like a phone call away. Like my parents are not by no means rich, but I knew, okay, if I need 2 grand to buy a ticket back home, like it's there. Like there's no way they would
Yeah.
leave me there. So that's a huge privilege that I had. It's not something everyone has. I know that. But I think that's the other thing that made committing much easier because it's kind of like, okay, I can commit and commit and commit, commit. And if by some turn of events I do completely fall flat on my face, like that's not the end of the story. I
Mm,
have a way out, you know, and that gave me the ability to commit, I think.
mm. I appreciate you sharing that and pointing that out. I think that people who maybe don't have that privilege have to
Mm,
identify you're making a big move to another country to pursue a dream that you almost have to um, identify what's worst case scenario.
yes.
And in your worst case scenario is you have an incredible family with the means to provide some support to help you if you
Yes.
you hit a low point. And so I think for people who are listening, that if you don't have that kind of privilege, that you almost have to identify, you have your backup plan, but
Mm,
then what is the worst case scenario? Like what is truly the worst case scenario? And then you say to
yes.
yourself, is that so bad? And can I make the move? And that's a judgment call that you have to make.
I'm laughing, Graham, because this is literally something I do with myself all the time to
Yeah.
confront, especially to confront my fears, not just about like career changes, about anything. I'm always like, okay, if I try this, like what's really the worst that could happen? Like,
Right.
and like, how would I deal with that? And then I kind of work backwards and decide if it's worth the risk or not. But it is something that actually gives me comfort if I
Mm,
consider that. For some people, I know it stresses them out to think about worst case scenarios, but for me, it's actually something that gives me comfort because I go, okay, now I know like what I would do if that happens, then okay, I got that. So now most likely it's not going to happen. So really I can handle anything else, you
right.
know?
Oh, I think
And
that's great.
I work that way.
I think that's great. So tell me about your last clocking out moment. When
Mm.
did you realize that opera was not going to continue on, and what did that transition look like?
Yeah, it was a bunch of kind of compounding factors, I suppose you could say. So I found a role at Hessen State Theatre that's in Wiesbaden, kind of near Frankfurt in Germany. Um, and it's great theatre. I was doing great work there. I got a few little small solo roles as part of my gig there. You know, again, you don't get paid very much as a singer, but enough to survive and not go into any sort of debt. So it was fine. It was good. Um, but I think the thing for me was after 3 years, I started going, okay, is this it? Like, what else is there? Like, I'm doing the job. I'm having fun when I'm on stage. But the rest of the time, like, you're in rehearsals. Okay, I read the music. I stand where they tell me to stand. I sing what they tell me to sing. But I didn't feel like I had a lot of agency. And I think the other thing for me is I was missing two things. The first was this logical problem solving part of my brain that I really wanted to use. I could feel it in there, and it's like I didn't have an outlet for that other than like crosswords. And then the other thing was that I'm an ambitious person. You know, I like the idea of continuing to push myself, continuing to push my career. That's important to me. And I was thinking, okay, if I were, you know, I think this exists in Stoicism as well, but it's something that I've done for a long time, even before I heard the word Stoicism, was I thought, okay, if I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking back at my life, would I regret not doing something? Like, would I regret this decision that I need to make? And I realized if I never got to a point where I could actually see how far I could go, like use my brain to do something and move forward and like make decisions of my own and push myself, would I regret that? And I thought, yeah, I really would. Like, this is something I think long term I need. So it was hard, this next one, because opera was fun. Like, day to day, it was fun. I liked my colleagues. It was good environment. It was a good job. Like, there was, yeah, maybe not the best paid, but like that wasn't a big deal for me. It was more about like, I think I'm happy here short term. I don't think I'll be happy here long term. At the same time, I became pregnant with my daughter, and my husband got a job in Leipzig, where we now live, which is a full-time singing job that actually does pay well. Extremely rare. It's with basically a professional choir. They do recordings, they do tours, this kind of stuff. Like top of the top, like cream of the crop kind of singers that do this music. It's exceptional. He's a true like musician, like through and through. And he got this job. I was pregnant. So I knew, okay, I'm going to move to him because he's got the better job. And I kind of thought to myself, like, maybe this is my chance, like to change into something else. And what would that be? Like, what could I even do? You know? And I started casting around for ideas. And I started, again, thinking back to my childhood and like, what has excited me in the past? What's in demand now? Here in Germany, software engineering is one of the few areas where they mostly speak English. So that was also a consideration for me, like where I can speak German, but again, it's not native level. I'm fluent, but I'm not like a native. And so it was a consideration of like, okay, maybe I should try programming again. I liked it as a kid. I did software development at school. I did those websites when I was 8. I've always liked the technical side of things. I wonder if I'm still any good at it. And when my daughter was just a baby, my husband, we kind of came up with a scheme, if you want to call it a schedule, where he would take the baby in the mornings and I would take her in the afternoons. And I would use the mornings to learn to code by myself at home. And honestly, as soon as I started doing it, I knew this is going to be it, because I became absolutely addicted to this world. I often say like the light bulb went off and the clouds parted and the sun shone down. You know, it was one of those like aha, like oh moments where you're like, okay, this is it. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. And sure enough, like that's what I did. I committed myself to it again. And I said, all right, once my maternity leave is over, I'm enrolling in a 1-year software development program. That was something offered by a private company, but supported by the German government. So for people who are jobless or on benefits, they would actually give what are called education vouchers to help cover the cost of upskilling yourself to get into in-demand careers. So at the time, there were heaps of jobs going for software engineers, not nearly enough software engineers to fill them. So basically, I got support from the government. They paid the fees for the course. They paid for my public transport, and they still gave me my jobless benefit check every month to enable me with a 1-year-old child to take this course and upskill myself. And from there, it just like took off. We're now 6 years later, and I'm a director of engineering, so it's like it's just gone really fast. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened, how that transition happened.
Wow. What a gift. What a gift for you to go through that program. And
yeah.
And I have to say that initially I was saying how that first job fed your mind, the second job fed your heart. And like this third clocking out, it was almost the best of both. Now you are feeding both your mind and your heart. And it's so beautifully scripted, and it just sort of all came together, which is, it's great.
Yeah. And do you know what, for me also is so cool about it? I mentioned earlier, like I used to have so much trouble committing to any like one area. And for tech, it has just not been an issue at all. Like I'm not even tempted. Like it's just, I'm so in it. I'm so like, I feel so in my element. That I've really found this combination between something I like and really love and something I'm good at. And, frankly, I think excellent at. And I've managed to combine these two things in that third vector, which is what people need. And, those skills I think are needed because I'm one of these unfortunately rare people who have both the technical mind, but also the people skills to translate this stuff for non-technical people. So that's kind of been in my mind why the leadership side has taken off for me so quickly and so solidly, because I feel like engineers are my people. Like I understand them, I get it, like I'm there with them. But at the same time, having worked with those conferences where I have to understand the flow of money, I have to understand different industries, that helps give me that business perspective. And then being on the stage has given me this ability to speak and to present about certain topics and to not feel shy, which is never really a problem for me, admittedly, but especially not after that career. So that also has helped me, therefore, in connecting these different worlds, the business world and the engineering world, and to be able to manage those teams in a way that is authentic and effective.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. What came to mind is how the diversity of your background and having the arts and the opera and your ability to perform, those are not inherent traits of an engineer. And if you're a software engineer that goes to college and you get your engineering degree and you work as an engineer for 20 years, all of a sudden you get promoted to become a software engineering manager. And one of the skills that is pretty uncommon is presenting and being comfortable managing people. And so the fact that you came in through this sort of very, very unconventional path to get to where you are today, it makes sense how you are, so well-rounded. And it makes sense how, just after such a short period of time, now you've sort of transcended into this leadership role. And I think the sky's the limit at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I hope as well. As I said, I'm still an ambitious person. I'm still super driven to get stuff done and to be impactful. And that's what drives me, really. And I love it. What can I say?
That's great. Well, I have to tell you one other thing, Anna, is I wrote another word down, and you almost alluded to it to some degree when you said you were an opera singer, and if you didn't take this last clocking out moment to find that last thing that was going to combine the head and the heart, that you would have lived with regret. And I did write down the word legacy, because I feel like you're at the infancy of this new sort of identity, and which is an engineering leader. And I just wonder, is that something you think about today? Is like, what is your legacy going to be?
Yeah, I think about that. I mean, I'm a huge Trekkie, so I love thinking about how technology can impact society. That's one of the things that draws me to it. Is this kind of, yes, it's utopian, but like this utopian vision of like, technology as a form of progress. I'm a technological optimist, which is kind of rare at the moment, I think. But I definitely think about that. Like, how can I be part of creating a vision or creating a society wherein technology is helping people and helping develop people and giving them skills and tools that they need, and or changing society in some way structurally that might assist. There are many different ways that I think tech can help people, and I want to be part of that. The weird thing for me, you mentioned I'm still in the infancy of this career, and it is really weird to think that because, as said, I feel like I've already achieved so much, and then I look ahead and I'm like, oh, I've got like a little under 30 years left in my career. So then I'm like, imagine all the stuff that can happen in 30 years in technology. Like, it's wild. So I really hope I can be part of all of that and that I can contribute to it and that I can create a solid legacy there. I don't think I need to be like the most famous person. It's not fame, I think, that is it for me, but for me, it's impact. Like, if I feel like I'm contributing solidly to driving technology as a force for good. So that's more the way I'm pushing myself.
That's great. I love that vision, and it's so inspirational that you sort of have this, this is who you are in the next 10 years and what that ultimately looks like. And the company that hired you, they have a gem. And I think that
thank you.
Over time, you're just going to shine and just do some great things. Anna, I can't believe the time has come. Like, I've had so much fun getting to know you. Like, I just knew and felt that this was going to be an amazing conversation, and I learned a lot. I really did. I love how you combine the arts and the science together to find a career that would have so much impact. I really appreciate your stories, and I appreciate you just being vulnerable and sharing your stories with everyone. I know it's going to be relatable, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. It's been so much fun. And I knew from the first time we chatted that it was going to be a good conversation, going to be a good vibe. So I'm really happy to have been here today. And thank you again for having me on.
Absolutely. And I'm going to share all your information in our show notes so people can find you. And honestly, Anna McDougall, they don't have to go far. Like, if you just search her name, you will find her book, You Belong in Tech, and all the great work that she's doing in tech. So I would encourage anyone who's inspired by this conversation to reach out to Anna. And thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks everyone for listening. Until next time. Hello, everyone. It's Raymond again here. I want to take a moment to say a special thanks to our sponsor, Career Minds. They're a global provider of career transition and career development solutions. And if you'd like to hear more on Clocking Out, we'd love for you to take a second and click follow of your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a rating or review. It really helps new listeners find the show. You can also watch the full episode on YouTube. Just search Clocking Out with Raymond Lee and hit subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to check out our episode polls or just drop us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Finally, if you or someone you know has a story to share about navigating change, taking a risk, or rethinking your career, we want to hear from you. Head to the link in our show notes and fill out the form to be considered for a future episode. Until next time, remember, if you're just sitting there thinking that you're stuck or you're unsure of your career or future and you think it's time for a change, I would encourage yourself to ask these 3 questions. Does my career or work make me feel alive? Am I doing the things that genuinely matter to me most? Am I creating value for myself and for others? Until next time.